All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. My name is Kenzie Caputo. I work on the admissions team for SYA, and I'm super excited to talk about SYA with you all. We're going to wait a few seconds, so if anybody else is joining, they can join us. But I am joined by three lovely alumni who will pull up on screen in a few seconds. But we're here to talk to you and answer any questions that you've submitted before and also throughout the program as well. So welcome, welcome. And once my three alumni join me on the screen, I will break down a little bit about how the night's going to flow, what we're going to talk about, and then we'll get right into it. But I have my three alumni. Hello, guys. So once again, I'll introduce myself before we get started. My name's Kenzie. I work on the admissions team at SYA. Like I said before, we're very happy to have you here. I just want to remind everybody watching that this info session is specifically for the full year and semester programs. That's going to be what a lot of our material is directed towards. So if you're interested in the summer, we won't really touch upon it today. You can definitely visit our website. As our three alumni too, they're also full year or semester students. So they're going to talk about their experiences. And if you're looking for the summer, definitely go see the website. But before we get started, I'll talk a little bit about how this is going to go. So I'll introduce my alumni here on the screen in a second. After we introduce them, we're going to go into a brief video from me, a little presentation. So it's going to be about 8 minutes, just an overview of SYA, the basic information. And then we're going to go into questions with our alumni. So we have some questions prepared for you. And then also we're going to open it up to everybody to round it out. But this info session is going to be about 45 minutes to an hour. So buckle on in and definitely feel free to use the chat as well. But without further ado, I will introduce my alumni on the screen. If you guys want to introduce yourself in the language that you were taught at SYA, that would be great. And then translate that into English, I should say. We can start with Sylvia, then go to Chrissy, and then Sophia, if that's all right with you guys.
Buonasera, mi chiamo Silvia, sono di Atlanta, ma ho studiato in Italia la primavera scorsa. Good evening, I'm Sylvia. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I go to the Westminster schools, and I studied in Italy for the spring semester.
Awesome.
Bonsoir tout le monde, je m'appelle Chrissy, j'ai étudié en France, mais précisément à Rennes avec SYA. Je viens de New Jersey et maintenant j'assiste à un internat qui s'appelle Deerfield. Maintenant, je suis en train d'étudier pour les universités. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chrissy. I studied in France with SYA, but specifically Rennes. I live in New Jersey and I go to a school called Deerfield Academy. Right now, I am busy with university and working on college stuff. So,
thanks, Chrissy.
Okay, hola a todos, buenas tardes. Yo me llamo Sofía Tamayo y estudié en Zaragoza, España. Soy de Fairfield, Connecticut y asisto al colegio Hopkins School. Y bueno, bienvenidos. So, my name is Sofía Tamayo. I studied in Zaragoza, Spain last year, full year, and I'm from Fairfield, Connecticut, and I go to Hopkins School currently.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you so much, everybody, for introducing yourself and your incredible language speaking abilities, too. So now that we've heard from our alumni, we are going to switch over to my presentation. It's about 8 minutes long, and feel free to ask any questions as well. I'm going to introduce myself again. My name's Kenzie. I work in the admissions office, and I'm happy you guys all can be here to learn a little bit more about our programs. So picture yourself or your child here, traveling around Europe, living with a host family, practicing a new language or a language they already speak at school. If you can imagine that, then it's time to apply to SYA. With campuses in Rennes, France, Viterbo, Italy, and Zaragoza, Spain, we invite you to step outside of your comfort zone and learn through a new country and explore a new area by learning through a language. So we're totally immersing yourself in a new country, living with that host family, and we're here to, turn your learning journey into one that's focused on real life experiences and adventures at one of our 3 European campuses. Now I have a short video that I'm going to play for you, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about our 3 programs.
Every experience you have here will be an adventure. The risks, the rewards, they're all included.
All right, well,
this entire year has just been about things being based on where we are or where we're.
All right, well, the video's not cooperating, so we're going to keep going. If you're interested in seeing a little bit more about that video, it is on our YouTube as well, and it's on our website. So definitely check it out. It's great. But what that video talks about is that all of our students live with a host family. So whether you're doing the semester program or the full year program, our students are matched with a personally matched host family. They become fully immersed in the local culture and feel truly at home while they are living abroad. So like I mentioned before, we have 3 European campuses, so one in France, one in Italy, and one in Spain, and you'll be a part of a small student body composed of sophomores, juniors, and seniors from high schools across the US. At the bottom of your screen, you can see our 3 campuses abroad. So these are our buildings in these different cities. You're not going to be dropped off at a random high school in France or Italy or Spain. You're going to our own school with our own SYA teachers and all of our students as well. I do want to mention too that our students, if you're interested in Spain or France, we ask that our students have at least a level 2 or have 2 years of experience speaking those languages. Italy does not have a language requirement. As long as you've taken some sort of foreign language at school, that works for us. And I want to reiterate that you do not have to be comfortable right now speaking the language. The whole point about SYA is becoming immersed in a new country, in a new culture, and really learning the language while you're surrounded by everything in that country. And a big part of our program is experiential curriculum. So what is experiential curriculum? It's really learning from the world around you. So seeing something in the classroom and then seeing it outside in the world around you, while you're fulfilling graduation requirements for your home school. So what it could look like is interviewing locals for your political science class, maybe presenting research on a historical site at that historical site, or visiting world-renowned museums for your art history classes. So, like our recent alumna and on the call, here she is, Chrissy said that she thought she saw independence at boarding school, but then she did SYA. Independence is a big word, but we always see that students say that they gained a lot of independence through our school travel. So at SYA, we do a lot of different school travel as groups with our teachers to different places throughout the 3 countries that our students go to. So in France, you might be going to incredible places like Normandy or Bordeaux or Mont Saint-Michel. And as you can see in all these places, there are some towns and cities that you might know. There are others that you might not know. And that's the whole point. We are going on these trips with our students to make sure they practice the language. They're visiting different places in the country and really experiencing what life is like in these areas. We also have something that's called a capstone. So what the capstone is, it's kind of an end of the year culminating project where students can take ownership of their learning and focus on something that's really important to them. So some recent examples are researching fashion and designing an outfit in Italy, investigating local farming practices in Rennes, France, or studying environmental sustainability in Spain. There's a lot of ways that our students take over their learning through these projects, and it's always really amazing what they come up with. I also want to mention that we have extracurriculars abroad. So we have somebody called the extracurricular coordinator at each of these campuses. Their jobs are to find our students activities while they're abroad, whether it's sports, musical groups, service learning opportunities, or any art clubs, stuff like that. Our faculty will try to help our students find that abroad. I also want to mention that we do a local exchange at each of our countries with a high school, so our students can make local friends and kind of see the day in and day out of a local high school in either Italy, France, or Spain. We have American teachers that will be guiding our students in math and English. So math and English will be taught in English. It won't be taught in French or Spanish or Italian, but all of our other classes will be taught in that target language. Italy specifically, they'll build up those skills as they go, as in France and Spain too. But these teachers are really going to push our students to step outside of their comfort zone, to speak in the language, learn by making mistakes in a comfortable environment. And they also take our students on field trips, fieldwork events, and our school trips as well. So colleges love SYA. I know some of our students that are alumni right now are working through the college process as seniors or currently in college. But at SYA, you'll be able to take your SATs so you can stay on top of everything. We also have college liaisons who will help our students start the process if they're juniors and help our seniors finish that application process. These are on the screen. You can see some schools most frequently attended by our students in the past 5 years. But most importantly, our students really find their voices when they're abroad. They're able to demonstrate the grit and ambition it takes to live in a new country and learn a new language as a high school student. That's really impressive and something that not a lot of people are able to do. So our students really stand out and find the colleges that are best suited for them. I also want to note that if anybody's concerned about financial need, we don't want that to get in the way of everybody applying to SYA. So we do have a robust financial aid available for students, about $2 million that we want to give to students, whether it's through merit-based aid or need-based aid. And so we encourage everybody to apply for it. I just want to make a quick note because we do have a lot of questions about this. We consider financial aid through everybody's. You'll have to apply through a separate, it's called SSS for financial need. But the rest of the scholarships will just be based on your application. So you don't need to do anything additional except for one scholarship. But we can talk about that a little bit later during the Q&A. All in all, SYA is a risk worth taking. If you want to step outside of your comfort zone, do something different with your high school career, SYA is a great way to do that. Fully immerse yourself in a new language, make lifelong friends, and just have an adventure of a lifetime while being at school. So we hope to invite you at one of our beautiful campuses in either Rennes, France, Viterbo, Italy, or Zaragoza, Spain. So on your screen, you will see a QR code. You do not have to scan it. The fact that you are on this info session means that you have already scanned it. You're in our system. This just serves as a reminder that our applications are due in February 9th to be exact, for the full year and for the semesters. So just make a note of that. There's plenty of time to think about anything, obviously to reach out to us as well if you have any questions. But this also serves as a reminder to follow us on social media. So Instagram and TikTok are great places to learn a little bit more about our program and to see what our students are currently doing abroad. We have campus reporters who are posting weekly content, and it's always great to hear from our students or to see what they're doing right now as the school year is going on. So thank you so much for tuning into this presentation. I'm sorry the video didn't work, but we will bring our students back and we'll get into the Q&A portion of our program. So we're going to start right off with a few questions. So favorite classes. I'm going to have Sophia go first. If you want to talk a little bit about your favorite class at SYA Spain.
Yeah, so my favorite class that I took last year was definitely Spanish Civ and Culture. I learned so much about like the effects of historical events on current policy, current conflicts, and overall, I think it was a great way to get to know the culture in a different way, because in experiential Spanish, we're interacting with our immediate vicinity more, whereas in Spanish Civ and Culture, we learn more about the society as a whole and different conflicts between autonomous communities and just international conflicts, and just the way that the systems are different from the United States. For example, like the political system, educational system, sanitary systems, and it was a great way to get to know the ways in which we could also adjust and shift our mindsets a little bit in our daily life and in our interactions with our host families as well. And it gave a lot of also topics for conversation with our host families, which was really nice.
That's awesome. It's great to hear, what you're learning in class. Obviously, it's great to have context about the world around you in Spain, but to be able to also apply that to your immediate surroundings with your host family, that's always great to hear. And I'm glad you enjoyed that class. Sylvia, do you want to talk a little bit about your favorite class at SYA Italy?
Yes, my favorite class was applied agroecology, and it was an elective. It's a science elective, which is why I chose it. I kind of like science, but it turned out to really be so much more than just a science class. My favorite kind of anecdote of it is because I was a spring semester student, I came in on the first day and the class was already being taught in Italian. So I was already like trying to pick up as much as I could there. And then what we did the first day, we made mascarpone, which is like a whipped thick cheese. It was awesome. Our homework that night was like a write-up in Italian on coagulation, which is like a scientific process that goes into making mascarpone. And then the next day, we used our mascarpone to make tiramisu and discussed like the cultural significance of tiramisu. And it was just such a whirlwind of like interdisciplinary connections that were all so relevant to what we were learning and like being in Italy. And just throughout the year, we kept on doing things like that, projects like that. The class really connected culture, language, and science in a way that like I had never experienced before in a class. And it's my absolute favorite. I still talk about it. Just wrote a college essay on it. Absolutely loved that class.
That is awesome. I'm so happy to hear that you wrote your college essay about that. That is so great. So thank you for sharing. We're going to move on to extracurricular activities. Chrissy, do you want to take it away?
That I can. So when I was in France, one of the extracurricular activities I did was every Wednesday, since we had a half a day, my schedule was a bit more open. So I took on tutoring a French boy. I would give him English lessons. And it was really fun because we kind of helped each other in a sense that I was teaching him English, but he was also helping me get better with my French. Since he was younger, I was able to learn a bit of slang from him, which was pretty cool. I'd also say the cooking classes in France were seriously so awesome. As someone who can't really cook, it was really cool for me to learn recipes that were really, really simple using fresh ingredients. And I managed to cook a few things for my parents when I came back home and they loved it. And it was just genuinely so awesome because the lady who gives us the cooking classes is very sweet and is very understanding of everyone's level of French, but at the same time you get to still practice the comprehension skills of a native French speaker teaching you a skill that is very important in France in general.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sure learning some French words for cooking and being able to take that back to home and practice those dishes with your family is incredible. Sylvia, do you want to talk a little bit about extracurricular that you did?
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite things that I did in Italy was ceramics. Every Friday, my friends and I would go after school to like a local ceramic studio, and just it was so lovely to have like the hour and a half to ourselves, and like it was just a fun thing to do. And we also formed really meaningful relationships with the lady who owned the studio. She had the cutest dog ever. It was really awesome. And we used that time to practice our Italian. We had like this rule that as soon as we entered, we were like full Italian from even when we really couldn't speak too much Italian. So it was always kind of a little bit funny, but a really helpful way for us to get involved, meet new people, practice our language. And I also, with one of my friends, we tutored first, second, and third grade classes and kind of were like classroom helpers for them at her host siblings international school. So that was fun to like get involved with that community. We spent quite a lot of time there, and by the end I had all these little Italian children that I loved so much that it was hard to say goodbye, but that was also a really meaningful experience.
That's great. It's so interesting that you both did something with tutoring kids in the language in either France or Italy. That's awesome. So thank you for sharing, both of you. Now we're going to go on to long-awaited favorite foods in your country. Sylvia, do you want to talk a little bit about favorite food?
So obviously it's Italy, pretty awesome on the food aspect of things. A little bit obvious, but I really did like the pasta. It was awesome. You could just taste such a difference. Every pasta dish wherever you were was so delicious. But kind of a fun little surprise thing I didn't really realize was an Italian food was supli, which are kind of like these fried rice balls with tomato sauce mixed in. So delicious. It was such a fun after school snack or pick me up whenever. And just any food in Italy was absolutely wonderful.
I'd have to agree with you on that. Any food at any of these countries, delicious. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about favorite trips. So Sophia, do you want to take it away about your favorite trip?
Yeah, definitely. So it's actually funny, like all my memories are popping up on Snapchat and like my camera roll from our like class trip that I loved so much. We went. So this was the fall semester, a week-long trip that we took with a third of our class. So I went to Barcelona with my group, and it was so nice to like have the opportunity to bond with roommates. We were put in rooms with people that like we were starting to form connections with. Like we didn't get to choose our rooms, but the director kind of made a point to put us with people that we were connecting with a little bit, and it really brought everybody closer. I formed my friend group on that trip, basically. Like my friend group for the rest of the year was that group that I spent the most time with. And it was really nice to like visit a city and really go and learn a lot about that specific place. Because so other trips went to different autonomous communities. Ours was Catalonia, but we stayed in Barcelona for the whole week, whereas other trips were structured where they went to different cities throughout the week. So we stayed in one hotel. We visited the Sagrada Familia. We learned a ton about like the culture in Catalonia and like the conflicts that it has had with like the Spanish state in general. And it was just a really interesting trip. We had so much fun. We really got to know the city, and we went back there like as a group, independently for an overnight trip as one of our independent travels. And that was one of the best experiences too, because we already kind of had our footing in the city. So we were really able to like revisit the places that we wanted to get to and like see more of.
That's awesome. I'm glad you were also able to go back again on an independent travel trip. That's great. And to also have like a little home base while you're exploring a new city is awesome. All right. Chrissy, do you want to talk about one of your favorite trips from France?
Yeah, for sure. So when I think of the trips, I honestly mainly think of the 2 trips to the south of France. The first trip that I went to was Marseille, which happens to be my favorite trip. It's a week-long trip to the south of France during the fall break, yeah. And pretty much we stay in Marseille, and while staying in even though we're staying in Marseille, we like move around in the south of France. So we went to, I want to say, between 4 to 5 different places in the south alone. And on the Marseille trip, we were pretty much learning a lot about architecture and art, like French art. We went to a lot of museums, saw a lot of old buildings, a lot of churches in particular. And it was really great for me because I was taking art history as an elective. So it was really cool to be able to learn about certain art styles and architecture styles in the classroom, and then see it not just in the north of France, but also in the south, and how like different cultures tend to make these styles different in their own way. And also on the trip to Marseille, one of the places that we visited was Cassis, which is still in the south. But we did this ginormous hike up a mountain, and it took like 3 hours. And afterwards, we were able to like bathe in like a small creek where like none of us came with bathing suits, but we all went in with our clothes on. And it was just such a memory that I often think about till this day. So I would definitely say that the south of France, like every time that we went there was just so phenomenal, because it's like a mix of cultures, and it's just so great.
That's awesome. And that little cool off must have felt so nice after a long hike. That's great. And I feel like little things like that on a big trip, like connecting with your peers, that makes the whole thing. Obviously, you're going to remember the architecture and what you're learning, but making those connections and seeing something you normally wouldn't do or doing something you normally wouldn't do really makes it come to life. So that's great. Thank you for sharing, guys. So now we're going to move on to host families. So Sylvia, if you want to talk a little bit about your host family and maybe recount a favorite memory. I know there might be a lot, but if you want to pick one.
Awesome. So my host family was truly fabulous. I think SYA does a really awesome job of like setting everyone up with a family that will work well for them. I had host mom, host dad, and then 2 older host siblings. That was really fun because I'm the oldest here in Atlanta, and it was kind of fun to be like the fun younger sibling for once. It was a fun little change. My like funniest host family story, which is kind of I like love to share, was like our first dinner together. I saw a bottle of something yellow on the table, and I was like, olive oil, awesome. I'm gonna pour it on my bread. Turns out the bottle was tinted, and I just like poured water on my bread, and they were all like, oh, you like water on your bread? And I like didn't have the language skills to tell them what had happened. And that was just a funny one, and I love to tell that story because I think my favorite thing to do with my host family was just kind of laugh. We love to like be silly together. That sounds funny, but it was a lot of fun just kind of spending time at dinners with them. And then by the end of my time, one of my favorite memories was there was a game show that would come on nightly at all of our dinners. Dinner together is a very important thing. And we started like making predictions with this game show, and it was like aligned perfectly with when we were learning the conditional in Italian class. So I kept being like, oh, if I were in her shoes, I would make this game show decision. And it was just so perfect. Another example of like class aligning so well with fun host family conversations and memories. And I love my host family. They were awesome.
That's awesome to hear. It's always great to hear about everyone's host families and what that kind of is like. I do want to stop for a minute and talk a little bit about the host family process. So obviously our students will be having their own application, which we'll talk about later. But once you get accepted and you accept that, you'll be able to fill out a little bit of a form to talk about what you're looking for a host family. You can also put any dietary restrictions, preferences, stuff like that in the sheet. And SYA will do our best to make sure we match our students with a host family in our area that fits those, what our students selected. So that's kind of how we go about it. In terms of host families, how do we select them? They're either referred to us by another host family or they've been doing it for a while. They're all background checked. Like I mentioned, a lot of them have been with us for a while, but we do have new host families every so often that are referred by other host families into the program. So they're great. We give the information beforehand to you so you can reach out before you go. But that's just a little bit about host families. If you want to ask more questions, feel free to. We'd be happy to answer those, but we're going to keep moving on. So we're going to move to favorite field work. So Sylvia, if you want to talk about maybe a favorite fieldwork activity that you did and what did you do?
One of my favorite fieldwork activities was kind of our first like trip to Rome, where we got to have some real freedom as spring semester students, because obviously you're on a bit of a different timeline, and the fall semesters are kind of been going, or the full years have been going to Rome for a minute, and we were like off doing other things on our fieldwork days. And then I just remember really vividly the first day that we all got to go together. It was technically like the second time we all got to go together, but this time we were all just kind of like in it the same, if that makes any sense. And we all had the same assignment, and it was just a really fun day because we had these 2 different art museums to go to. And I didn't even take the classes. I took Latin and Agro, so I didn't like have assignments to do. It was just fully about like having a like good experience and paying attention, just like learning for the sake of learning, which is like definitely a big value that SYA instilled in me. And I think back on that day of just like walking around these art museums and like helping my friends with their projects and learning things through your friends. A lot of times like different classes will have these projects where they have to get like friends, like videos of their friends and telling things that they were taught. So that was always really fun. I loved volunteering to help my friends out on those. And that was just a big day of learning because it was awesome, and there was so much cool art and connections and language to practice and culture to observe in front of me.
That's awesome. I like that. Learning for the sake of learning. New tag. That's great. Thank you so much for talking about that, Sylvia. Now we're going to move to capstones. So you saw a little bit about capstones in that presentation, and we had a picture of Chrissy in there. If you want to talk a little bit about your capstone project, Chrissy, that would be great.
For sure. So I seriously love my capstone project because at first I wasn't too excited to do the capstone, mainly because I didn't really know what I wanted to do it on. But then I started to think a lot about what is something that genuinely like changed my life in France. And oddly enough, it was the butter because the butter in France, like there's an entire history about how in the north of France was able to have salted butter because like they weren't being taxed for salt because they were like Brittany was considered independent from the rest of France. So you already know Brittany for the win. But basically, so my capstone was on the history of French butter and how that translates to culture in today. Like when in the picture that you guys showed, I was actually at a market that opens every Saturday morning. It's called the Marché de Lys. And pretty much I was interviewing not only customers on the street buying products, but also I interviewed some chefs and bakers to see their inputs and opinions and thoughts about using butter in the kitchen, as well as whether they prefer salted butter versus unsalted butter, using butter and other fat substitutes like coconut oil or olive oil, and just gathering up data and information on real life experience with salted butter. And then it was also really, really great because I got to go to a French dairy farm where I got to learn how different races of and breeds of cows affect the quality of butter, and I was able to make my own butter at the end of the day and bring it in for my capstone, and everybody ate it and it was really great. And I even studied a bit about this butter, I'm not going to say butter store, but this a butter store that's very popular in Brittany called Bourdieu. They're known for making very eccentric flavors of butter. In fact, like restaurants all over the world order butter from this one entreprise. So I was able to try to flavor my butter in their ways. And it was just a lot of fun to be able to turn something that ended up being like really silly into something pretty serious. And it was just a lot of fun, not only learning about the history, but also going to the farm, doing these interviews. And it was really, really great because since it was towards the end of the year, it's when you really get to like see how much French you really do know. Because doing these interviews, it was not easy. I won't lie, because I get nervous talking to strangers. And for me, it's just like asking people about their opinions on butter, that's something different. So, but it was really fun to be able to see how much I knew, how much vocabulary I knew, and see my conversations go, as well as meeting the farmer and having those interactions with him, and then eventually having a finishing product after everything that I had learned. So it was really, really fun.
That's incredible. And the fact that it all stemmed from, hey, you know what? I really like butter. And I feel like I was on that journey with you. We linked the TikTok, Chrissy's TikTok that she made in this, and I remember seeing it, and I was like, "This is so cool." So thank you for talking about that. That was great to hear. All right, I think Sophia, would you like to talk a little bit about your capstone project?
For sure. So basically, last year they kind of did an experiment with doing semester projects instead of an end of year capstone. So that was kind of a shock to everybody when we got there, and we kind of were all like freaking out. Like we had no idea what we were doing. We were still like pretty mediocre with like language, and I mean, I was at an advantage because I came into it with more knowledge than I would say most of my peers. So, but I was still so stressed out about like what am I gonna do it on? I don't know like what to model it after. When we got the instructions, it was basically like pick something and do a project on it, and that was it. And I hate that. Like I'm definitely somebody who needs structure, instructions, like. So I panicked and I was like, what am I learning about right now? And it was sustainability in econ class. So I decided for my first semester project to do a project sort of on the intersection of sustainability and industrialization in the city, and like kind of see where people stood on it and like what the trends were, which was a very complicated thing to tackle because I had no idea who to talk to about that. But I did end up getting to talk to very interesting people, like the president of this nonprofit foundation for sustainability, and he really gave me a ton of information that I then used in my second semester project, which was sort of more an economics-based project about like how the economy was changing for the city and how it was becoming more of a prevalent factor in the country's economy. And so in that project, I also got to talk to some pretty important people, and it was really cool to talk to different heads of political parties and like the Chamber of Commerce. And I learned a lot, and I really learned to take control of a situation too. And I was kind of an unexpected lesson, and it seemed pretty straightforward, but like kind of just getting the confidence to reach out to people, like try different things, like see what works, what doesn't work, and kind of just go with what you have. That was a super important lesson. It really helped me in my college applications. It really helped me with like just kind of putting myself out there more, and it really increased my confidence as well as everyone else's. Like I definitely noticed a shift like doing these projects in people's ability to just kind of put themselves out there. And even in the classroom, it increased confidence for people to just talk and like not be so afraid of making mistakes. And it's definitely something that I took away from that and really am able to use in a lot of different areas now.
That's great to hear. And your takeaway too, you know, I think that's incredible, being able to put yourself out there, especially in a new country and a new language. Like that takes a lot of guts. So I know it was tough to start to find something. I'm glad you were able to take something in class and turn it into something incredible. So thank you for sharing, Sophia. We're going to move on to a typical day at school. So maybe just talking about SYA community, maybe like what a typical day would look like. So Chrissy, if you want to talk about a typical day at SYA France.
Okay, so first things first is I wake up pretty early frequently because I was always really excited to go to school to see my friends and my teachers, and it was really great. So I'd wake up pretty early, and then I take the metro to school. I didn't live very far, but still take the metro for convenience sake. And then afterwards, most times, like I skip breakfast at my house, and I like to go to Carrefour with my friends. Carrefour is like a French mini mart, I guess, like a French supermarket chain brand, and we would just go there, get some pretty cheap pastries and baguettes. And then afterwards, depending on the day, I would have I go to my classes, and then by what I mean by depending on the day, if it's normally sometimes we have half days on Wednesdays, but I go to my classes, and then afterwards we have lunch. Sometimes we're able to go to town to have lunch because we actually have a pretty long lunch period, which is really great. I think the reason why they do that is because they recognize that French people, or I think Europeans in general, like to take their time to eat. So the hour and a half lunch period is definitely superb. But a lot of times we go to town to get food, like go out to eat to a restaurant or a cafe, or we go to the French high school that is a 5-minute walk from our school, where we're able to get free meals as well, which also has pretty good food. And then afterwards, return to school. I would have the rest of my classes, and then after school, if there is an activity hosted by the Spirit Committee, then we would do that. Sometimes it's like a crepe truck. Sometimes it's just there's snacks in the common room or something like that. Or if there's not anything like that, then sometimes I have my extracurricular activity as well, which was the lessons, or sometimes I would go to the gym, or sometimes I would just go into town to hang out with my friends, like at the park, or go shopping, or just, get a little snack together. Then return home, and I would do homework for a little bit before heading to dinner with going to dinner with my host family. And I think going to dinner was a big change for me because at least in my house, we don't have like family meals. But in France, and I'm pretty sure in most of Europe, family time is a pretty big deal. So like I I wasn't rushed to finish my homework, but for me, it's like priority to finish my homework so that I can go have dinner with my host family. And that would last for about an hour or so. And then afterwards, almost every night, we would just end the night off with tea and a movie. And then afterwards, it's bedtime. And you do it all over again.
There you go. Thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
Yeah, it's always great to hear a little bit about like the day-to-day life, the insides. And I'm sure you wish you were there right now, even though it's nice to be back. But we're going to move on to day in the life for Sophia. If you want to talk a little bit about Spain, and they're kind of similar, but it's always good to hear another perspective from a different country.
Yeah, for sure. So I had a commute of about 10 or so minutes on the tram, which was not bad at all. I was like right outside my door, so it was super convenient to just like take the line down straight right in front of school. I woke up usually around 7:30. School started around like 8:30ish, 8:45. So I would usually go to a cafe with some of my friends before school started. Culture shock moment for me was finding out that cafes don't open until like 7:30 a.m. mostly, like 8 maybe. That was shocking to me. I was like, one day I thought I was gonna like go to school early and get my work done a little and like get a little coffee, and I realized that nothing was open. Like I was fully sitting outside. It was not even light out. And I was waiting for the cafe to open.
Oh no.
And it was like not like what we would consider that early, but that was funny. And then after having like a little coffee right before class, we would walk over. We had this one cafe that we went to called El Criollo, and we went like every day at one point or another in the day. It was like our favorite little spot. It was like 2 seconds from school. So then we would have classes, and then lunch, obviously same as Chrissy, very long lunch period. So sometimes we would go out, or we would go to the cafeteria and then hang out and have like a good bit of free time to just decompress or walk around or go back up to school and just kind of do whatever. And then after classes ended, which was usually around like 3:30ish, close to 4, we would have a couple hours before curfew. So a lot of times a group would gather at a cafe, or we would like go to the gym. The gym became a real social spot for us our year. I don't really know how that happened, but everyone just hung out at the gym, and it was super fun. And then obviously curfew would be around 8, so I would go home around like 7-ish usually and hang out with my host family for a little bit before dinner, maybe get some work done. It was pretty manageable to get work done during the day for me. Like usually if I was at a cafe with people, we would be doing homework. So then like I had enough time to sort of just be with my host family, eat dinner, hang out, and not be too stressed about things being due the next day. I think a lot of the teachers were pretty reasonable about managing expectations for us and like being realistic about how much time we were going to be spending with our host family versus doing homework. But that's basically it, I would say.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I didn't know that about cafes either. So that's a good note if anyone's going to Spain. All right. Thank you guys so much for sharing. Our last question that I have here before we move on to submitted questions is, what made you apply to SYA? I'll start with Sylvia. I know that this is kind of a big question, but if you want to answer it, go for it.
So SYA came to my school as part of like a big assembly that we had my sophomore year about like various programs, semester and year long, that my school like partners with. And I just remember SYA in particular caught my attention. And as everyone was kind of like leaving our big assembly room, I was just hearing things like, oh, like that sounded fun, but like I wouldn't want to miss football games, or like I wouldn't want to miss prom. And I just kind of sat there thinking, I'd miss prom. That was like, that sounds awesome. But it just kind of sparked that initial interest. And from there, I took it into my own hands, did my own research, really found out kind of a lot of the really cool things that SYA students get to do. Talked to my parents about it. They kind of thought it was a phase. And then I kept up with it. And I think I talked to them around October, and then by January, they realized I hadn't become disinterested yet. And they joined a Zoom call similar to this one, but it might have been Italy specific. Oh, to preface, I take Latin, so I am a bit of like a Roman history nerd, and then also couldn't, like, Italy was my only option and it fit well, combination of both. So that's my why Italy. And then once they joined a call kind of like this one, and they really got to hear about like field work and experiential learning, they got it too. And then we were like all excited for this, and then it was kind of no stopping me from there. There wasn't like a certain particular like language, history, travel draw. It was just kind of a big combination, and also just all of the opportunity that came with SYA.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sylvia. I'll go to you, Sophia. Do you want to share a little bit about why SYA?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, same thing. Like Maggie Bland's came to our school my sophomore year, and I just kind of fell in love with the description of the program, like off the bat. It was kind of like a little mini college fair for different programs, but I was like, that's the only one. Like, it's that one or none of them. Like, I don't want to go anywhere else. And same thing, like, I just kind of felt like there was nothing that would happen here that I wouldn't get to experience the following year. Like, there was, like, there's such a fear of missing out, but it's kind of like at the expense of a unique opportunity that, like, I find a lot of high school experiences are repeated over the years. So even if you miss your junior prom, you have your senior prom, or like, you know, things like that, where it's like there will be 15 football games when you come home. Like, you know what I mean? The one that you miss is not that important. So, and I also grew up in a household that really like invests in travel over like material things. Like my parents have always cultivated that mentality in myself and my siblings. So it's not something that like scares me. And each of my grandparents grew up with extremely different like cultural backgrounds. Both of my dad's parents are South American, so I already had like some level of Spanish, like kind of ingrained in my life in some way. So that was kind of why Spain specifically, and I also take Spanish at school. So yeah, I mean, I think definitely growing up like that helped me have like the initial confidence to pursue it, but definitely it's something that I really wanted to do, and I pursued it. My parents were very supportive from the beginning of me pursuing that. So that was kind of how I ended up applying. It was kind of a spur of the moment decision though, which I think is pretty true for everyone. To pursue it, I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing, Sophia. I'm glad that, you know, your parents, you had something instilled in you about like traveling and like, why not? Why not just do it? I think you summed it up great. So thank you for sharing your experience. And Chrissy, last but not least, if you want to talk a little bit about why SYA.
Yeah, so when I came to my school, I decided to take French because a lot of my family speaks Creole, which is a language that is pretty much a dialect of French, but I never knew how to speak it, nor can I understand it. And I was really upset that I couldn't, so I came up with the plan of learning French to learn Creole. And then I found out that as a freshman, even though it was my first year or my first time ever learning French, like I wasn't learning it fast enough to my liking, and it really bothered me. And in my dorm, my hall resident was a French woman, and she had told me that, well, if you want to get better at French, then go to France. And unfortunately, like freshman year, because of all the pandemic, that was not a possibility for anyone. So sophomore year came around and I was still in French. I was still really unsatisfied with the level I was going at, not in a sense that I thought, oh, it's not good enough, but at the same time, I felt like I'm not really getting it. You know what I mean? I feel like this is really surface level and I'm not getting the language in my head. So then Maggie Bland came to my school, and I was really, really excited because I had to remember the conversation that I had with my hall resident who was like, go to France if you want to learn French. And I was like, I'm going to go to France. So I did exactly that. And similar to what Sylvia and Sophia said, I 100% agree. I mean, when I applied to SYA, I was not afraid at all to miss out on anything because I did not care. I was like, this is the one time I'm going to get this, and I would rather do this as a junior than a senior because realistically speaking, even if I could do it as a senior, I would because this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like you will get this in college, but you won't get this at 16. You know what I mean? Like I can actually say that when I was 16, I packed my bags and went overseas to study and become bilingual, and it worked. So I feel like as much as there was that, oh, Chrissy, but you're gonna miss like what Sophia said, you're gonna miss junior prom, you're gonna miss like Spirit Week, and you're gonna miss this and that, and I'm like, you guys should see what y'all missed out on because what you guys missed out on was nothing compared to what I missed out on. Like I wasn't like, I'm not even kidding. I was like scrolling on like Instagram, seeing like our spring day and seeing like our head of school days and our junior prom while in front of the Eiffel Tower. So me personally, I was like, we got bigger things to worry about. So I was pretty glad to go to SOI so that I could become bilingual because that was like my main goal. I really like the idea of knowing another language. And for me, I wasn't learning it at the rate that I wanted to. But then going to SOI, it definitely worked a lot better, like being in the country where that's the language primarily spoken. So yeah, that's why I decided to go to SOI.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Chrissy. I loved that. That's a big fear about missing out and stuff, and that's totally reasonable. But what would you miss out if you didn't go to SYA? So I liked that little sum up. We're going to move on to questions. So I know we have a few questions in the chat, and we also have some questions here. Oh, great question. So interested in applying to Italy, but undecided. So on your applications, when you apply, you can rank. You have a top choice and a second choice. So if your daughter or your child or you are interested in doing a semester, you could say, my first choice is Italy fall. And then your second choice could be Italy full year. And we will look at those rankings. If one fills up, we'll put you in the other one, but it's good. You definitely can rank too. That goes the same for programs too. So if you say your first choice is, France full year, but your second choice is Italy full year, you could do that as well. So you're able to rank your choices in terms of the application. This question's for Sophia. I know you kind of talked about it, but you could tell us or what level you were at before you went, or if you knew Spanish before, Sophia.
Yeah, sure. So I didn't grow up speaking it, but my grandfather lives in the house with us up until I was about 4. So I really had those initial years of immersion that were really critical for me to just have like the language in my head going into it. And then we visit my family in South America. We try to go once a year. It doesn't always happen, but like I've always kind of had the ability to practice a little bit. So then when I went to Hopkins, I took a placement test and placed into Spanish 2 accelerated, and I took AP Spanish language and culture my sophomore year. So going into Spain, I had already taken the AP. So my level was pretty significant going into it. But I do know, like, when I got there, I had friends who could barely conjugate verbs and their language transcended, like, so far over the course of the year. And it was really great to witness that. My goal going into it was to kind of perfect some of the things that I struggled with, and like to not have to think so much about whether I'm speaking correctly and just have more confidence in my abilities and just to kind of take it to another level that I wasn't really getting at school. But I had friends who went into it just trying to learn the language at all. And it was really interesting to see how like the gap got exponentially shorter as the year went on.
That's great. Thank you for pointing that out. especially about the, some people come in with like high language proficiency, and then others come in at like the level 2, we would say. But that's great to hear. This is another good question. I don't know if any one of you want to take it. Sylvia, we talked about it a little bit earlier about like your return back, if you want to be the person to answer that question.
I could speak on this a little bit. So obviously there was a little bit of like I was sad to leave. I was sad to leave my friends, my host family, the country, all of the above. But that being said, coming back to my high school, I think part of it is, I think it was nice to go junior year and come back senior year. There's a lot of like, at my school at least, a lot of fun senior traditions and like things that made coming back feel like a big celebration and kind of like a victory lap year in some ways. But obviously I still am taking hard classes, applying for college, and I think SYA really kind of helped fuel like a new kind of curiosity and like desire to learn, and like just a genuine interest in a lot of my subjects. Like all of the emphasis on experiential learning has like really transformed who I am as a student, I'd like to say, and made me a lot more eager, just like as a student every day. Academics, it's been a smooth transition, and with college stuff, SYA gives you, first of all, like it really helps develop you as a person and like prepare you for that process, and like knowing yourself better definitely helps you find a school better. And secondly, countless essay topics, so many fun stories, and just like ways to show that you've like taken something into your own hands, like gone the extra mile, done something super cool and awesome. The transition's been smooth, I'd like to say.
That's great. Thank you for answering that. And I want to be mindful of time too. For this question about the gym, there are actual gyms where people can exercise. I know we touched upon that a little bit. I know in Italy, that was another thing. I know, Sophia, you talked a little about people hanging out at gyms. Yes, you get a gym membership and you go and you hang out. I know the kids in Italy did that. Yes. And I know there's questions about extracurriculars too. Definitely check out our website. We have all of our extracurriculars and sports listed there, as well as, leadership opportunities, stuff like that. I want to be mindful of everybody's time because we are approaching that 1 hour mark. So if you didn't get to ask us your question or have your question answered, feel free to reach out to me at mcaputo@sya.org. My full name is Mackenzie, so mcaputo@sya.org, or schedule a call with us. We'd be more than happy to, talk to you or connect you with a past alumni to answer your questions. But thank you so much for everybody joining. Thank you so much to our alumni. You guys were incredible. Couldn't do it without you, and I appreciate you sharing your unique stories about your times at SYA. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.